Evening, welcome to UPfront. Tonight, we put our sharp focus on the raging storm around the anti-LGBTQ bill. This bill has been unheard of for a very long time. That is making the Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana concerned. Listen to him.
So happy when I read that Pope Francis directed that no Reverend Father should celebrate over a gay or lesbian marriage. And I said, Roma locuta complete, causa finita. Yes, Rome has spoken, and the matter is ended. So please, committee members that will refer the bill to, we want the report. Don't be intimidated by any person. Hallelujah. I made this statement when I was a member of the European Parliament, European ACP Parliament in Brussels. Now we have two of our members who happen to be leading our committee, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, who are handling the bill. And since we referred it to them up to date, we have not heard anything. I've reminded him many times on the floor of the House. What are the challenges you are meeting? Report to us. If you take action against them, say, oh, because I'm MPP. That's why he's taking action against me. Ah, I'm NDC. Because he's taking action against me. Because he's not in my party. That kind of division, that is not the purpose of politics. Politics is meant to unite us. Diversity is natural. There's nothing you can do about it. That is creation. And that is the spice of life. How come we are using that to divide ourselves? Please, let the report flow. We need to legislate. Our friends just passed their law in Uganda. We may not go the way they have gone because our constitution is very clear as to the direction we should move. And so we'll be guided by that. Because if we pass any law against the constitution, it's unconstitutional. So we have to do that. And so what are you afraid of? If you have the whole people behind you, if God is with you, who can be against you?
That's the Speaker of Parliament. Obviously unhappy with the status of this particular bill. Tonight, we have summoned the people who are working or have worked on this particular bill to tell us what's its status. Plus, more than just that, this Speaker's comment had a second part where he was unhappy with this interaction between the President of the Republic of Ghana and the Vice President of the USA.
I have raised this issue, and let me be clear about where we stand. First of all, for the American press who are here, you know that a great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change.
We don't have any such legislation here in Ghana. A bill has been proposed to the Parliament of Ghana, which has all kinds of ramifications, which is now being considered by the Parliament. It hasn't been passed, so the statement that there is legislation in Ghana to that effect is not accurate. No legislation. The bill is going through the Parliament. It's going through the Parliament. The Attorney General has found it necessary to speak to the committee about it regarding the constitutionality or otherwise of several of its provisions, and the Parliament is dealing with it. At the end of the process, I will come in. But in the meantime, the Parliament is dealing with it. And I have no doubt that the Parliament of Ghana will show, as it's done in the past, first of all, its sensitivity to human rights issues, as well as to the feelings of our population, and will come out with a responsible response to the proposed. The legislation was a legislation that is being provided as a private member's bill. This is not an official legislation of the government, but it is one that is being mooted by a handful of private members. So we will see what the final outcome of it. But my understanding from a recent discussion I had with the chairman of the committee, the substantial elements of the bill have already been modified as a result of the intervention of the Attorney General. We will see what the final outcome will be. And that is the stage at which I will also have the opportunity to prove it.
So why is the Speaker unsure where he's supposed to be operating, that's the Parliament of Ghana, which has been working on this bill is? Why is there lack of clarity, not only in the President's speech, but also in the Speaker's mind about the status of this particular bill? I'm asking the people because they are my guests. We'll soon be joined on the phone by the chairman of that important committee. It has a long name, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. The chairman will join me on the phone. But in studio with me is the ranking member, the Honorable Ben Ahiafo. Is the member of Parliament for Akachi South, right? Honorable, you are welcome to our front.
Thank you.
I hope you are doing well this evening.
Very well.
So why are you hiding the bill from the Speaker of the Republic of Ghana?
Well, let me use the opportunity to thank you very much for inviting me to your upfront show to discuss the status of anti-LGBTQ bill currently before Parliament, particularly before the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. In fact, when I listen to the Speaker, I have no objection but to agree with the Speaker. The reason is not far-fetched. When this bill was introduced somewhere in 2021, it was referred to the committee responsible for constitutional, legal, and parliamentary affairs. And as usual, following the due process that we followed in passing a bill into law, we advertised the bill. And this bill has generated so much concern from the general public, the civil society organizations, the non-governmental organizations, the churches, the Muslims community, the traditional rulers. We received about 200 memoranda on this particular bill, which is very unprecedented. I entered Parliament in 2013. And all along, I've been with the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee as a member in the 6th Parliament, as a member in the 7th Parliament, and the ranking member in the 8th Parliament. I have not seen a bill that will raise about 200 memoranda. Now, following the practice in Parliament, we need to have a meeting with all those who raised the memo. Now, the committee was saddled by these 200 memos received by the committee. So we program it. And you can recall that sometimes we go to the extent of having a public hearing, which will be telecasted widely to Ghanaians and abroad, so that the public can follow us regarding what we are doing. So because of the number of memos that we have received, you have to deal with those 200 memoranda. It caused a bit of delay. It is after dealing with those memoranda received by the committee that the committee would resolve into a meeting to consider the bill clause by clause, generate a report, and then lay the report in Parliament, and the bill is due for second reading. Now, this bill is very novel in Ghana. So some members of the committee must travel to jurisdictions where the LGBTQ is being practiced, and then jurisdictions that are anti-LGBTQ, so that we can put all concerns together and come out with a law that will stand the test of
Is that a normal process all laws go through?
Yes, it's normal process. If you
That
have
you
a
have
bill,
to travel and go and
yeah,
learn
if you
from
have
other
a if you have a
countries.
bill which is very novel,
When you know their
that
laws
is
are clearly
that
also
is
on the
that is
internet
what happened.
already.
Others are practicing it.
Yeah.
Others are not practicing it. For instance, if you get to Hungary, the way they practice the anti-LGBTQ is different from the bill that is currently before us.
Yeah.
Now, their own has got to do with the amendment of the Children Act.
Yeah.
To prohibit anti-LGBTQ among children.
Yeah.
Now, in Ghana, we are prohibiting the act among children as well as among adults. So, understanding them to know the way they are going about their own will go a long way to inform the committee regarding the kind of amendment that they should do to the bill.
So,
further to that, our Constitution 1992 is clearly dedicated to human rights.
Okay.
Chapter 12, starting from Article 12 of the Constitution onwards. And the Constitution is clear that any law that is repugnant to any provisions of the Constitution, to the extent of that inconsistency, it is null and void. So the committee must ensure that no single provision in the anti-LGBTQ bill is inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution. So a whole lot of work will have to go into doing that. And finally, the committee has done the clause-by-clause consideration. The report has since been ready. It is for business committee to program it. It will be laid, and the second consideration.
First, when did you finish this clause-by-clause consideration as a committee?
The clause-by-clause consideration of the committee was finished somewhere in February. February.
Okay, and then last month.
Yes, last month, February. Yeah. And then the attorney, either February or January. Then Attorney General's letter came.
Okay.
Raising some issues, and we need to grant audience to the Attorney General. So when the Attorney General,
happened, right? Yes, some said in times past that you were being deprived of resources. Was this true?
Well, I would say that to some extent it is true, in the sense that every public hearing of this particular private members' bill is at a huge cost to the committee's budget, not Parliament's budget. Okay. You know, Parliament, they allocate to communities, and it's at a huge cost. In fact, one sitting can cost over 100,000.
I see.
Because to bring the van to come and do broadcasting, you are into journalism.
Yeah, I get
you know what goes into it. And we did about 9 of such hearings. So you can imagine the cost that is involved. So at a point, the committee doesn't have money to continue with the stakeholders.
So there were funding issues?
Yes, there was funding issues as one. But what is important is that the committee clause-by-clause consideration was ready before the Attorney General was invited to appear before the committee and raise issues relating to his concern. I placed this on record. So when the Attorney General came, I took the view that Honorable Attorney General, Minister of Justice, the committee had done clause-by-clause consideration. I believed matters that you are raising in your letter, if you were privy to the committee's clause-by-clause consideration, you wouldn't have raised all these issues. So the meeting between the committee and the Attorney General and Minister of Justice lasted less than an hour. When the committee used several days to do clause-by-clause consideration.
Let me make this point clear. You are saying this because the President of the Republic of Ghana says substantial elements, and he has spoken to the chair of the committee, substantial elements of this bill has been modified, and these modifications was on the instance or with the instigation of the learned Attorney General of the Republic of Ghana.
If the Attorney General wants to take the credit for what is not due, I will leave it to him and the President of the Republic
of Ghana. But what is the fact?
And I believe strongly that the President has not been properly briefed. I am stating, you can ask any member of the committee, including the chairman of the committee, at the time that the Attorney General came before the committee The committee was almost done with the clause-by-clause consideration.
The
So issues raised by the Attorney General, most of those issues have been taken care of by the clause-by-clause that the committee has done. So I have before
25. You give me a second. The Attorney General had raised 25 issues, perhaps on the clauses in this particular bill.
Yes.
Out of the 25, how many of them have you already dealt with and you are unwilling to go back and review again?
Well, I haven't done the statistics.
Okay.
But when the Attorney General appeared before us, more than 80% of the concern raised by the Attorney General had been dealt with.
So this
some of the
modification,
some of the concerns raised by the Attorney General, the Attorney General himself has abandoned those concerns.
Specifically, what are we talking about, for example, examples of that?
Well, for instance, the bill is proposing that those who are into LGBTQ and they want to come out, they should be subjected to medical treatment.
Yeah.
The committee is of the view that looking at the constitutional imperative in Article 108 of the 1992 Constitution, you private member cannot introduce a bill that has a financial implication. And clearly, subjecting people to medical treatment has a financial implication. This bill being a private member's bill, that particular provision cannot be there. So the committee proposed to those who, the proponent of the bill, and explain it to them that because of this constitutional imperative, this provision cannot be in the bill.
We will take time. I will spend some time with you. We'll go to those clauses that were actually amended and all of that, so that we truly know the actual status of the bill today.
Yes.
We will deal with that.
Yes.
But I need to, because in this conversation, the bill, the greater part of the support for this bill was from the clergy.
Yes.
I have joined this conversation Most Reverend Samuel Noah Mensah. He's the former president of Full Gospel Church International. I'll be coming to him in a second, but there's another point though. The president was a bit categorical in his mind that, well, this is a private member's bill. I'll come in later on. But it was not, it has been substantially modified. So there's a difference between the bill as when it came in and the bill as we have it today, which is because my Attorney General, and you are disputing that claim.
If you followed me at the stakeholder engagement, the very first day, and I think Chairman can bear me out, I maintain that the bill in the current form that it was referred to the committee may not end up in Parliament the way it was brought to us. Because I have read the entire bill and I've read other provisions.
Okay.
The Criminal and Other Offences Act, particularly Section 104, Chapter 12 of the 1992 Constitution. And I was with the view from day one that the bill will go through some modification. At the time that the Attorney General have not even thought of writing to the committee.
Okay. Now, so we'll get to the modifications.
If you get there, you can ask the chairman of the committee, and all those who appear before us, as to whether I took this particular stand at the time that we were doing the stakeholder engagement. Because as a lawyer, I also look at some provisions of the
Brilliant.
bill.
And of course, we will come to those provisions and deal with the detail part. I just want preliminary comments on what was said by the president.
Yes, that is what I'm saying, that the president can please himself. He can please himself. He has not been properly briefed. The bill was not watered down by the Attorney General. As if the Attorney General, members of the committee are not lawyers who are supposed to look at the law and craft the bill in a way that it will not be repugnant to the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana.
But he says your chairman told him that. Your chairman told him that.
Well, we'll ask the chairman as to whether that was what he told the president.
Now,
forgetting that members of the committee who are lawyers, they look critically at the provision of the bill and try to iron it out in line with the various provisions. I quite remember the first day that we met.
Oh no, but I'll come back to you. But I need to bring it, yes.
For instance, proposed that even the title of the bill must change.
Okay, well, we'll come to whether or not that was accepted. The other point has been raised by the speaker. So how come you finished work in February and the speaker is unaware?
No, you see, upon completing the work, we have received a letter from the Attorney General and then the Minister of Justice. Some of us are with the concern that if the Attorney General has this concern, during the stakeholders' engagement, he would have brought it to our
You've
notice.
received a subsequent letter?
Yes, from the Attorney General.
After meeting him?
After the stakeholders' engagement.
All right.
And some of us are with the view that the Attorney General's letter must be part of the stakeholders' engagement.
Okay.
But whether you like it or not, he is the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, number one, at the bar. So the committee has decided to grant the Attorney General audience after the stakeholders' consultation and the committee greater clause-by-clause consideration of this particular bill. That is where, when the Attorney General came, we were able to hold the clause-by-clause consideration and said, Attorney General, look at this particular provision. You are complaining about this. This is the committee's proposal. Look at this. This is the committee's proposal. This is the committee's proposal. That's why I'm saying that the meeting with the Attorney General lasted less than an hour.
So my question here is how come you have not briefed the minister, the Speaker of Parliament?
Well, our responsibility is to do everything and present a report, a copy of which will be given to the
So
Speaker,
as of yesterday, the
Speaker
report
of
was
Parliament.
already then?
Who told you as of yesterday the report was
Because
already?
he would have known.
I had a
isn't it?
copy of this particular. Well, we have channel of communication to the Speaker of Parliament. Reports like this must pass through the proper channel in getting to the Speaker's table. I had a copy of this particular. I had a copy of the draft report to go through and then recommend any view that I share concerning the report. I did that and sent it to the committee. I even met with the clerk of the committee in person of Kofi Minka.
So sorry,
we
let's make
discussed
point
this,
clear.
and
When
all
was the
those things
report
were.
ready? Yesterday, the Speaker was unaware that the report was ready. But when was the
Well,
report
I
ready?
believe as at yesterday, the report should be on the table of the Speaker.
So he's gotten it now?
I believe
When will it be
strongly.
laid?
Well, laying of a document in Parliament is not the responsibility of the committee.
Are you
It's
being
the responsibility.
intimidated?
No, I am a
Is
man
the
with.
committee
I'm a
being
man. I am a
intimidated?
man with indomitable spirit. I cannot be intimidated by even the President of the Republic of Ghana. When I know this is the right thing for me to do, I will go a long way to do that particular right thing.
But the Speaker
So the
suggested
the
it
Attorney
made it
General,
look like you were being
the
intimidated.
Attorney General, who was a year behind me at the law school, the Deputy Attorney General, Tuya Yeboah, who happens to be my classmate, knows that Bernard Ahiafo cannot be intimidated. And members of the committee are very experienced lawyers, and they cannot be intimidated in any manner whatsoever. Who can intimidate Honorable Cletus Avoka? Who can intimidate Ayarega? Who can intimidate Honorable Dominic Aini? Who can intimidate Honorable Animeru Entry? Who can intimidate Sosu? Who can intimidate Bernard Ahiafo?
I get your point.
These
but-
are members of the committee that I'm mentioning to you. So the committee's responsibility is to look at the existing law and look at the bill. For instance,
No, I'll come to that.
Very well.
But let me
Very
bring
well,
in
very well.
Reverend SMS. Most Reverend, you're welcome. I actually kept you on for a while. It's because I wanted people to understand this part of the conversation clearly. There appears to be the speech of the Speaker, the speech of the President, and also some thinking that we are unsure where this bill is and it's languishing somewhere. But from the clarity we've gotten in here, the bill is almost ready. As in ready, it's just that it's being laid in Parliament, and the Speaker should have a copy of himself. I want to start from the point of what the President has said. You heard him. Did it sound to you like the President represented the people of this republic in his speech?
Thank you very much, Raymond. Yes, I heard the President loud and clear. In my view, it didn't look like the President represented the large majority views of the people, the culture. You know, our country, definitely, the President is the embodiment of the nation, culture, values, and beliefs. And it didn't sound to me like the President was actually representing the entire values of our people and the culture of our people. I think he appeared a little bit evasive, you know, on the subject matter, because at one time, you know, in Kumasi, I think, where he addressed the Anglican Church, he said this thing definitely is not going to be practiced under his watch as a president. I mean, he was emphatic last year or last 2 years on the subject matter. So this was something we all knew was going to definitely come up. So he should have been firm, in his statement, and also to have convinced Ghanaians that definitely this is something he believes in. Kamala Harris was very firm. She said this is something she stands for, she believes in. It was just a simple statement she made. And I think our president just could not express that strong belief on this particular subject, Raymond.
I get your point. I needed to. Okay, you want to say something? Hold on briefly.
President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, on this issue is blowing hot and cold.
How do you mean?
He's blowing hot and cold in the sense that he represented to the international community that LGBTQ is bound to happen in Ghana.
Of course, he said with sufficient advocacy, and we don't have
with sufficient advocacy.
But we are not there yet.
Very
When
well.
Sufficient section of the
So
public
following
goes into that.
the doing of the
But that's
advocacy.
caveated clearly.
Yes, following the advocacy, the LGBTQ community got office in Ghana here, and they tried to institutionalize the LGBTQ activities in Ghana. This was not accepted and taken kindly by Ghanaians. And I believe that particular act was what informed the Ghanaians, as a result of which a group of members of parliament, predominantly members of the opposition party, and one person, Ntim Fojo, from the ruling government, who are the proponent of this particular bill to proscribe the act completely. In fact, the office was even closed down, and people are of the view that those who did that should be arrested and prosecuted. Now, it is this same president who will meet the Christian community and said that the LGBTQ under his watch would not happen. The categorical statement is that under his watch, it will not happen. Now, relate this particular statement to it is bound to happen, and tell me whether the president is not blowing hot and cold. Now, when the vice president visited Ghana, instead of the president being bold to tell him that currently there is a bill in parliament, it's not yet law, but he believed that that particular bill will be passed into law to proscribe the activities of the LGBTQ.
Would that not be a premature comment on this?
Well, it will not be a premature comment in the sense that, you see, as lawmakers, what is the concern of the people? Law is an instrument of social engineering. It's just a communicative action. Law must be in aid of development. So if you look at the bill under reference in that context, is it a bill that should be passed into law, or it should not be passed into law? So in my view, if the president doesn't want this particular bill to be passed into law, he should come out and make a categorical statement that as a president of the Republic of Ghana, I do not want this particular bill to be passed into law. What will happen is that, as parliament, I believe strongly, we'll do the second reading of the bill, do the consideration. If the need be, we'll do the second consideration of the bill, do the third reading, pass the bill, and send it to the president for royal assent, for him to decide whether not to assent to the bill. And by constitutional imperative, he must bring the bill back to parliament with an explanation as to why he is unable to assent to it. So when we get there, we'll be able to cross the bill. I believe strongly as a member of the committee, the committee's report is clear, recommending the passage of the bill. We have recommended to Parliament that this bill must be passed into law based on the reasons stated in the committee's report. And I believe Parliament will adopt the committee's report and pass this particular bill into law.
I guess I need to bring in the Reverend now. So, Reverend, are you satisfied hearing the Speaker, hearing the President, that there's still a good future or passage for this particular law? Or you are unsure whether or not the ultimate or the leader of the country is, as in, on the same plane or plane with the rest of us? Are we all reading from the same hymn book?
Well, I think it's heartwarming to hear the honorable, member of parliament, who is expressing the views of the Constitutional and Legal Committee, and also what the Speaker said. It's a reflection of the entire society, or to some large extent, the population of the country. And so we strongly believe that this will be passed. However, the president has the last word in terms of assenting to assent, to the bill. We will be watching. with keen interest. And we believe that he will do the honorable thing in the supreme interest of the nation.
Sure.
In the supreme interest of the nation. And so, as of now, we can't foresee a situation where the president will turn his back on this particular bill. I will wonder what he'll be explaining to his lovely girls and the grandchildren, where he stands on this subject matter of same-sex marriage. So we will observe keenly, but I believe that the president will do the honorable thing in the supreme interest of the country.
There is a story on CNN which suggests that Ghana's president softens country's stance on draconian anti-LGBTQ bill as Kamala Harris visits. The suggestion in this story is that Ghana has shifted to the middle a little bit on the position we held on the matter. Is that reflective in the view of you in clergy?
I don't think so. I think this story is just to enhance the political image of Harris Kamala, and not necessarily the people of Ghana, because she's campaigning this LGBTQ agenda all around the areas she's visiting in African countries. So CNN, of course, will toe that line to enhance. I mean, more or less, just to give the impression that a visit has achieved the needed goals that she set for herself. But we thought yesterday the president was not very firm, though, and that it appears that there seemed to be slightly a shift, not necessarily towing the direction of watering down, but I think we will definitely address that. And church leaders are speaking to the subject, encouraging our MPs to ensure that this is the bill is passed and then it gets to the president. Once it gets to his table, there would be pressure that will be mounted on him. And I believe that with the pressure, he will do what is right in the supreme interest of our nation.
Do you think that we need a clear statement from the president on this matter? Do you think he should come again?
Absolutely. I would desire the president to really speak on this matter and make things very, very clear that under my watch, as he said 2 years ago, under my watch, this will not happen. Well, Raymond, as you know, he said the same thing when he came to the Galamsey. Under his watch, Galamsey, even if he has to put his presidency on the line, he was going to do that. But what did we see? That even members from his, the Jubilee House, who has one way or the other from the stories we've heard, allegedly being involved in the Galamsey. So sometimes one thing the president says one thing, and the action is also another thing altogether. But I think he needs to become very clear on this subject matter, because that represents the views, the culture, and the spirit of the nation. So it will help him if he should make matters very clear that this is where he stands on this particular subject matter.
And Reverend, I'm most grateful to you for joining us this evening. I am pleased that despite your very busy schedule, you found time to express some words with us on this network. Reverend Essen Mensah, Most Reverend, is the former president of the Full Gospel Church International. Now, there's something I promised you, and it's so important to this conversation because some are thinking that, well, we can pass a bill, but it may be extremely different from the bill, or in the words of the president, a bill that has been watered down. No, the exact word is not watered down. The bill that has been softened to a very large extent, substantially modified to not look like the same bill that we had in. You have clarified the point to do with whether or not it is on the instigation of the Attorney General this is happening. Now, the Attorney General gave 25 pointer directions, specifically on clauses. Share with us some of the major changes you have made to this bill from what was submitted to you as a committee and what you are proposing to the Parliament should be changed. No, if you want me, I can even submit to the areas that are key.
We have attached to the report of the committee as Appendix A, which indicates in a clear terms the proposed amendment to the bill and the rationale underpinning those amendments.
Okay, I think this is how we should go about this.
Let me even take one. You see, short title of the bill, We are proposing
what the Attorney General said.
Yeah, no, it's not that. The committee.
Okay.
We are proposing that you delete promotion of proper. And the rationale is that what is proper to you may not be proper to another
proper is
person.
subjective.
Yes.
Honorable,
So
yes, I know this is
proper is subjective. So the committee has proposed that in order not to subject the law into a subjective interpretation, that word should be deleted. So the committee agreed on it. You understand? The rationale as stated here is that every law passed, no, that was a further proposal that we should delete Ghanaian from line 2 of
Something
the bill.
General agreed with
The reason is that every law passed in Ghana relates to Ghana and apply to persons in Ghana.
So you don't have to
We are
repeat
not
that.
making international law.
I get
so
your
you
point.
don't repeat that.
Because of time.
So these are legal.
Okay. Essential things that would automatically happen.
Yes.
But
For
I need
instance,
to
another
drill
thing-
down to the most important ones
Yeah,
that
yeah.
have been controversial.
Yes.
Because some of the issues have come up.
Yes.
For example, will the law still prevent anybody from doing advocacy conversations or even have those things, advocacy around same-sex, what they call it, issues, or LGBTQ issues?
Yes. The law as it is now
Yes.
the committee proposed that aspect of the rendition in the earlier bill must be taken off. In fact, it was argued extensively, and the proponent of the bill agreed that it should be taken out. Now, what then do you refer to as advocacy?
Okay.
What do you refer to as advocacy? The law is also talking about transgender, and transgender is a hormonal issue. So when somebody is coming out to say that if you are transgender, you can be subjected to a medical condition by which your sex, your natural sex would then come into a reality, is that person supposed to be punished? You understand?
I get
Now,
your point.
when somebody is preaching against LGBTQ, it's an advocacy in that particular field.
That's on the other side.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that person supposed to be published?
I thought the idea was
if
the
you look
advocacy
at,
was for rather.
if you look at the law, the limit of the advocacy was not very clear. So we feel that if that is criminalized, it is likely that innocent people would be punished. So our responsibility as Parliament is to proscribe the act. You know, two things constitute a crime. The act and the intention. Those two things constitute a crime. We borrowed it from a Latin word, actus non facit reo nisit mens rea. No act entails criminal responsibility unless the mind is legally blameworthy. And law being a communicative action, you make it straightforward so that once the offense is committed, it is clear to every ordinary person that this offense has been
this is clause
committed.
12, which talks about prohibition of propaganda, of promotion of, and advocacy for activities under this particular act, right?
Yes.
So you say you have taken out the act or you have modified it?
We did a lot of modification, and
Okay.
then we have taken the aspect of the advocacy from it. What is advocacy relating to LGBTQ? As we are sitting in this radio, what is advocacy? Assuming you are a judge, and they say advocacy about LGBTQ.
Okay.
What do we mean by that? You understand? So when there is a clause in a bill that raises an issue of ambiguity, to be on the safer side, that clause must be removed. Because one cardinal principle of making a law is that the law must be clear, certain to an ordinary person. Because you are not making the law for only judges and lawyers. An ordinary person, given the opportunity to read the law, must read and understand the act that is being proscribed. There must be nothing like uncertainty, ambiguity about any provisions in the law. So sometimes clarity
It's required here.
is required.
All right. So
Clarity is
the other question, though, is to do with the sentencing. In fact, that was one of the references for the draconian title given to this particular bill.
Yes.
What has happened to the
Well,
number of years that
we look
was
at,
earlier
we look at the
proposed?
sentencing, and then we try to align it with the Criminal and Other Offences Act, in the sense that unnatural carnal knowledge is already an offense in our Criminal and Other Offences Act. Section 154 is very clear, if my memory serves me right, on the issue regarding the Criminal and Other Offences Act. Now, if you do the anti-LGBTQ bill, for instance, and you said anybody who is involved in the act is liable to be sentenced for 10 years. I'm just making an example.
Yeah.
And then the section on the Criminal and Other Offences Act states that the person is liable to be sentenced for 3 years. What will happen is that an act can constitute an offense in the Criminal and Other Offences Act. For instance, homosexuality is a natural carnal knowledge. And at the same time, the homosexuality is also an offense in the anti-LGBTQ Act. So you are putting the prosecutors into an election, whether to prosecute under the Criminal and Other Offences Act or to prosecute under the anti-LGBTQ Act, because the sentencing regime are not the same. So what the committee did was to align the sentencing regime in the LGBTQ bill to the Criminal and Other Offences Act. Therefore, if you charge the person under the Criminal and Other Offences Act, or you charge the person under the LGBTQ, the sentence at the end of the day, when the crime is established, will be one and the same, by which the prosecutors will not be put into an election whether they should prosecute under the Criminal and Other Offences or anti-LGBTQ.
So if I draw down
a bill,
you are saying
that is the reason.
In the bill, what was the proposed period for anybody engaging in the act?
I think it's about 5 years or so.
5 years.
And the Criminal and Other Offences is 3 years.
So what is the committee proposing? 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So that we align it, because by this particular law, we are not amending the Criminal and Other Offences Act.
Okay.
It still exists. So therefore, homosexual, the prosecutor can decide that, oh, under the Criminal and Other Offences Act, if I send you to court, you'll be sentenced for 3 years. Because when you charge the person, the judge has no responsibility to sentence above the maximum sentence prescribed by law. The judge must operate within the ambit of the maximum sentence. So therefore, the prosecutor who likes your face will say that, oh, let me prosecute you under Criminal and Other Offences Act, where the maximum sentence will be 3 years. A prosecutor who doesn't like your face will prosecute you under the LGBTQ, where the sentence is 5 years.
Give me a second. I mean, I think these are very key issues you have raised and probably clarified.
Yes.
I'll come back for us to do a lot more of this.
Yes.
But I've been joined on the phone line, the spokesperson of the National Chief Imam, is Sheikh Raymond Acquah. And I'm so privileged to have you because, I mean, you start Ramadan and you might have broken your fast or in the throes of doing so as we get your time. We are privileged to have you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Sheikh, there is a conversation here because of what has come up recently with the Speaker's comment and the President's own. For those of you in the faith community, especially of the Islamic extraction in this case, which of the speeches gives you comfort? I mean, if you compare that of the President to that of the Speaker, which one were you happy with? And which one do you think could have been done better?
Thank you very much. And I have listened to the two important personalities occupying very important positions in our country. And I think that I go strongly with the position of the Speaker. And the Speaker has remained consistent in the tone with which he has spoken against this LGBT thing, also speaking in support of the passing of the anti-LGBTQ bills. The Speaker has visited the National Chief Imam and has made a vow to the National Chief Imam not to sit looking unconcerned for this practice to go on in our country, and that he will do everything in his power to ensure that the bill passes through. And we hold him to account. And the Chief Imam is also being briefed about everything that is taking place. And so from speaking for the Chief Imam and knowing the interaction that had already taken place, I think I'm very comfortable with the tone of the Speaker, and I support and I commend him for that. The President, we know earlier on, has also made remarks, but in this particular sense, great due respect to the president, heavy respect for the president. But I think in this particular case, he has not been that forthright in even indicating a personal position and a certain feeling about how, in our national mindset, somebody who is also a man of faith, coming out clearly on the note of even Christian revulsion for this action to say, look, this thing is not something that I will ever support. And I think we should have heard something like this from him. Then the matters of procedures that has to do with the person of law, that one will be a matter to comment on, like the issue of modification substantially to ensure it meets the human rights requirements and so on and so forth. Not coming that, I see a heavy kind of dilemma on the president, and he's sounding overcautious. That's the way I see it. He's been overcautious in trying to talk about it as if not wanting to offend a certain force that is coming from somewhere. That's the way I see it. But because I've heard the president speak forthrightly and would have a strong tone about certain things, like some of his encounter with Macron, for example. I was expecting that even on this particular case, which is at the very core of the survival of the family system, in both Christianity and Islam and the African traditional religion, I would have expected him to come out stronger and more definite on the issue. Great respect for the president, but I thought that I would have liked to hear him coming a bit more stronger than I heard him. The issue we are dealing with, I want to state it once again. The LGBT issue we are dealing with, we from the faith community level and as a nation, we are not viewing it from a human rights angle, but that we are viewing it as something that undermines the very survival of the family. That is it's not so much of a human rights issue. The damage it does to the family, and once you want to destroy a community, you begin destroying the family and you succeed. That is why we are unable to accept this. That's how God made it. It's a man and a man that gets married in order to allow the flourishing and the multiplication of the human species. This is the system of God. So LGBT is a complete violation of God's system, the divine system of God, within which the human species is preserved and protected. And so it's not so much of a human rights issue for us. It's the destruction that it does to the very survival of the family and the threat to the survival of a human community. That is where we are talking about. So I hope that this thing, we push it ahead and get this anti-LGBT bill passed. Okay. So we can, maintain, our values as expected.
It will be unfair for me to continuously take your time when you have to break your fast. Sheikh Karim Ashabi, I'm so grateful that you joined us this evening, and I'm coming back in studio.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
It's section 104.
Oh, okay, that's what you're referring to, section 104.
104.
Now,
the criminal and other offenses.
Before we wrap up this conversation, I want you to highlight 3 main issues that have also gone through some modification. Then you conclude by telling me whether you have done substantial modification to the bill as it was presented.
Well, I maintained at the stakeholders' engagement from day one. If my voice can be played out, having looked at the bill, I indicated before the committee and the general public that looking at the bill the way it is, it may not end up in Parliament the way it was brought in its current form. So there is going to be some amendment to the bill. So I have with me a 9 pages amendment to this particular bill. Now, Article 108 of the 1992 Constitution clearly states that when a bill has a financial implication, it cannot be introduced by a private member. It can only be introduced by the executives because of its financial implication. So there is an aspect of the bill that states that people who are anti-LGBTQ and wants to come out should be subjected to a medical treatment, free medical treatment. And that free medical treatment is going to come at a cost to the nation. So in view of Article 108 of the 1992 Constitution, by the imperative, that particular provision in the law cannot stand. Therefore, the committee proposed that that be deleted from the bill.
So no treatment proposed?
No treatment.
Okay.
So they can do it on private basis. If the churches, the Muslim community, and then the traditional community wants to assist somebody, that one is not a matter of law. Because if you make it a law, then by imperative, the government will have to do it. And Article 108(2) of the Constitution does not allow a private member to do such a bill. You understand? So we propose that be deleted. Another major thing that we have done was to realign the sanction regime to our criminal and other offences act. Another thing that the committee has done is to make sure that any provisions of subjectivity is taken out of the bill so that there will be certainty and to avoid ambiguity. Because what may be proper to you may be improper to somebody. So it is a matter of interpretation, and judges may even interpret it differently based on the circumstances. So we have done those major changes to the bill in order to provide clarity. Another major thing that we have done is the issue of intersex.
Yeah, okay.
You understand? We ask that it be deleted from the bill because it is a medical condition rather than a choice. So if somebody is an intersex, for instance, it's a hormonal a problem. So why do you criminalize that particular hormonal act? You understand? So we ask that aspect of the bill should be pulled down, because clearly that will not amount to LGBTQ activity.
Okay.
So these are some of the changes that we have. And as drafters, when we are looking at clause-by-clause consideration of the bill, we first read the memorandum accompanying the bill. And the memorandum states the principle, the mischief in a society that the law, in effect, will have to cure. Then you go to look at the interpretation of the bill. Then you start reading the bill clause by clause in order to have a better understanding. So having read the entire bill, then you come back to it again, looking at it clause by clause. For all you know, a provision in clause 3 has been taken care of by a provision in clause 8. So you have to be watchful and say, this is the same as this. So if that has been the case, based on the principles of brevity, then this one of the clauses must suffer a deletion. And we'll do all those things, taking the principles of drafting into consideration.
The proponents, were they with you through this exercise?
Yes.
Do they agree to the changes that
Yes, they have substantially agreed to the changes that we have made.
Did the Attorney General also agree to the changes that you have made?
Yes, he has agreed to the changes that we have made. He is not opposed to any change that the committee has made.
So can you give assurance to the people that the bill will be laid soon?
Well, that is why I am stating that by a committee or a ranking member of the committee, once the report of the committee is ready, it must be programmed by the business committee. I believe strongly the bill will be laid between tomorrow and Friday.
Honorable, I am grateful for your time this evening.
The report will be laid either tomorrow or Friday. Because I'm looking forward. All that needed to be done has been done. It's just a matter of the report appearing on the order paper for laying, and it will be laid. And then they will go and program it for a second reading. Then it moves from there. I must state
are both sides of the House in support of this bill?
Well, I have spoken to the majority side. Most people in the majority side, they are in the favor of the passage of this particular bill. This is not a bill that will be politicized, because we are all at them as to whether the bill should be passed or not passed. So it is not purely coming from the minority side. That is why I am mentioning specifically one of the proponents of the bill happens to be a member of the majority group.
Reverend E.T. Fojo.
Reverend E.T. Fojo. And most people will walk to me as a ranking member. We are waiting for the bill to come to pass. So I believed that it will be passed in a very expeditious manner. What is important is that the difficult aspect has been done. Going through the stakeholder engagement, taking 200 memoranda, going to look at the clause by clause in view of the laws that have been done, then the Constitution to ensure that no aspect of the bill can be taken to the Supreme Court to be shut down for being in contravention with the 1992 Constitution. Once that has been done, when it gets to consideration stage, when we pick an amendment,
when it's late,
yes,
I'm convinced that we will come to have a more detailed conversation.
Yes,
on
we can
this.
have a more.
But I am grateful to you this evening for your time, the Honourable Ben Ahiafo, the Akachi South MP. Your constituents, they were sending me messages. But many thanks to you also for watching this show today.